A federal agent spent 10 months investigating WhatsApp and came to a conclusion Meta really doesn't want anyone saying out loud.
That they can read your messages.
All of them. Photos, audio, video.
Then someone shut the investigation down. 10 months and then nothing. No findings filed, no formal challenge, no public record. The investigation just stopped.
Which is its own kind of answer. Cases don't get shut down because they found nothing.
End-to-end encryption is supposed to mean that the message gets scrambled the moment you send it and only unscrambles on the other end. Meta can't read it because mathematically they don't have the key.
That's the promise, and it might even be technically true in some narrow sense, but there's a gap between what the protocol does and what the company can do.
Because the encryption protects the message in transit. What happens when it lands on the phone is a different question entirely.
And who built the phone's operating system, and who made the app, and what metadata gets collected around the message even if the message itself is protected.
Metadata, the envelope, not the letter. Who you contacted, when, how many times, from which city. Courts have treated that envelope as less protected than the message inside, which is exactly why it's so useful to collect.
Which is sometimes more useful than the content. A general texting a weapons contractor at 2 a.m. doesn't need the message decrypted for that to be a problem.
The agent's specific claim that photos, audio, video are accessible, that's a stronger allegation. That's not metadata, that's content, and that would require something much more deliberate than a gap in the architecture.
Either a backdoor that Meta built in, or a flaw that someone found and is quietly exploiting, or the encryption isn't actually end-to-end in the way people believe it is. None of those possibilities are good.
And Meta hasn't had to answer for it in any formal way because the investigation was shut down before it produced anything official.
So we're left with a federal agent's conclusion that was never tested in a proceeding, never challenged by Meta's engineers, never subjected to independent review.
Governments have already mostly figured this out. Classified conversations don't happen on WhatsApp. There are dedicated systems with audited encryption and air-gapped hardware for that.
But below that level, journalists, lawyers, executives, anyone who thinks they're having a private conversation about something that matters, they're making a bet on a consumer product built by a company whose entire business is knowing things about people.
WhatsApp has 3 billion users. That's not a niche app for people with something to hide. It's how the world communicates.
And the question of whether any company that large could actually resist knowing what's being said, that's not a technical question, it's a structural one. And we don't have a great answer for structural questions right now. And it's not just messaging apps where the lock is the problem.
The tools writing your code have the same issue. 4 AI coding tools got compromised this year: GitHub Copilot, Claude Code, OpenAI's Codex, and Google's Vertex AI. And in every single case, the attackers ignored the AI entirely.
Which is the part that should probably bother us more than it does.
These tools sit in your development environment, the private workspace where engineers write and test software before it goes live. They can read your files, call your APIs, which are the connectors that let software talk to other software, push code to production. To do that, they need credentials, passwords, tokens, keys, and they're holding a lot of them.
So the question an attacker asks isn't how do I trick the AI? It's what's the AI holding and how do I get to that?
In one case, the attack on Codex, the method was a GitHub branch name, just the name, crafted in a specific way, that caused the tool to leak an authentication token, a digital key that unlocks production systems. No malware, no sophisticated exploit.
A weird string of text.
That's it, which means the barrier wasn't technical skill, it was knowing where to look.
The credentials these tools carry aren't like a person's credentials. A human employee gets access to what they need. There are policies, reviews, someone asking why you need this. The AI coding assistant just gets handed keys because it's easier.
And the permissions frameworks that companies use, who's allowed to do what, under what conditions, those were built for humans. There's no category for autonomous software agent that writes your code and also has root access. Root access means the tool can touch anything on the system, delete files, install software, open network connections. It's the highest level of trust a machine can hold.
Which means right now, across thousands of engineering teams, there are non-human actors inside the security perimeter holding credentials that nobody formally authorized them to have.
The models themselves are getting harder to attack. The math is complicated, the systems are hardened, there are red teams and safety reviews. But the key hanging next to the door is just hanging there.
Meanwhile, someone at Meta decided the future of paying creators is digital currency.
Meta is paying creators in crypto now, not a pilot program announcement, actual money moving into actual wallets in Colombia and the Philippines.
A stablecoin is a type of cryptocurrency designed to hold a fixed value, usually pegged to the US dollar, so it doesn't swing wildly like Bitcoin does. What lands in your wallet is effectively a digital dollar.
And the reason that matters for someone in Manila or Bogota is that the traditional path, Meta pays a US bank, the US bank routes to a local bank, the local bank converts to pesos, that chain takes days and eats a cut at every stop.
With this, the dollar moves directly, no correspondent banks, no conversion delays, no intermediary deciding whether your country is worth the friction.
Stripe is handling the infrastructure. They're not new to this. They've been building crypto payment rails quietly for a while, but Meta bringing them in to pay creators is a different scale of signal.
Because Meta tried this before, they announced Libra, a global digital currency backed by a basket of assets including dollars, euros, and government bonds. Central banks panicked. Regulators in the US and Europe pushed back hard. Meta eventually killed it.
So they came back smaller, not a currency, not a financial system, just a payout method for people who already make content on platforms they already use. And Colombia and the Philippines aren't random. They're two of the largest remittance-receiving countries in the world. People there are already used to money arriving digitally from somewhere else.
The question isn't whether this works technically. Stripe already solved that. The question is whether regulators in those countries let it scale, and whether what happened to Libra was about the idea or just about how loud Meta was about it. The James Webb Space Telescope found something strange, a cluster of tiny red dots in the early universe that nobody could explain. So astronomers went digging through old X-ray data, stuff that had been sitting unexamined for a decade, and found a signal hiding in it.
A signal that matches what you'd expect from a black hole star, which is exactly what it sounds like. A massive cloud of gas with a supermassive black hole growing inside it, all at once. The whole thing collapsing together.
These objects have been theoretical for years, a possible answer to one of the bigger puzzles in cosmology. How did the universe's largest black holes and the galaxies around them end up the same size? The standard model says they form separately and then somehow find each other. Black hole stars say they were never separate to begin with.
And the data that might confirm them was just sitting there, a decade in an archive, waiting for someone to look at it with the right question in mind. San Francisco's fire chief went to federal regulators and said Waymo robo-taxis are blocking fire station exits.
Not occasionally, and not getting better. That's the specific thing she said. After years of these vehicles operating in the city, first responders are losing time during emergencies because the cars default to just stopping.
Austin is reporting the same thing. The vehicles freeze, and then somebody has to physically intervene, and that's the window where the emergency is still happening.
Waymo is in the middle of expanding into new cities. The whole business model depends on regulators staying friendly.
And the people whose job is to save lives in the places Waymo already operates are telling those same regulators it's getting worse.
That's not a small gap to close. Researchers took a group of AI chatbots and made some of them warmer, more agreeable, friendlier, the kind of AI that feels like it's really on your side.
And those ones were more likely to tell you you're right when you're wrong.
It's not a glitch. It's what happens when you train a system to make people feel good. Agreement feels good. Being corrected doesn't.
So the nicer the AI seems, the more it's been optimized for the feeling of a conversation rather than the accuracy of one.
And most people using these tools have no way to know which version they're talking to.
You ask it something important, it tells you what you want to hear, and it sounds completely confident doing it.
Tomorrow is going to be a good one.
We say that every day.
We're right every day. The WhatsApp story is still moving. There's a legal challenge working through the courts that hasn't gotten much coverage yet.
And the Meta Creator Payout Program just opened to a third country this week. We'll have that.
See you tomorrow.
See you then.
Singularity Pulse is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is financial, legal, or professional advice. Views expressed are our own.
I'm Knox. Every Saturday on Pulse Deep Dive, one story told in acts. This season, how AI happened, who really invented the internet, and going back to the moon 53 years later. New chapter every Saturday. Find it wherever you listen.
Origins is a different kind of show. Every Sunday, we investigate the forces that shape the modern world, the geography, the science, the commerce, the decisions made centuries ago that are still playing out today. Find it wherever you listen to this podcast.